friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here to answer 5 questions that I got recently about putting up herbs from the garden. So I have a ton of videos on herbs. I have video profiles on individual herbs, their benefits, and how they can be used. I have videos that go all the way across the 10 years that I've had my channel so far of dehydrating herbs. That I just did one last year that I'll link to down below about dehydrating temperatures and all that. But today I wanted to just focus on these 5 questions, as well as lead you back to some videos and playlists I already have, which that playlist, by the way, I mentioned earlier, I will also link in the description box. So the first question was, because this person had seen me doing a whole bunch of videos about dehydrating herbs, was asking, why can't they just use them fresh? Well, you can. And I have covered this before, but I know out of my 2,500 videos that I have out there that there's a lot that can be missed. But right here, I have some fresh lemon balm I just gathered. All of this I just gathered before shooting this. Some lovage leaves and the stalk, and some rosemary. And this rosemary, some of it even has the flowers on there. And yes, when herbs are coming in, I use them fresh in many ways. With some of these things, it might be as simple as just adding to salads, like the dandelion greens or the nasturtium flowers and leaves or pansy flowers and leaves. These are great in salads, and many more. Borage flowers just are really great because they add a nice cucumber flavor and that blue color as well, so you can have a nice rainbow of colors in your salad. However, when it comes to medicinal uses, I use them both dried and fresh, depending on what I'm making. If I'm making teas out of them, and it's the time of the year that the herbs are growing in fresh, yes, I just use them fresh. I'm not going to bother to dehydrate them to make teas. Lemon balm is one of those I definitely like to use fresh for making teas. I prefer it fresh for tea making rather than dehydrated. So it's not one that I dehydrate up a lot of, except for that which I'm drying up to make my mixed herb blend for my chicken. So it's something that they're going to be more apt to eat if it's dried up and then mixed into their feed, and is really good for them. Lemon balm being one of the many. And then rosemary, though I like to dehydrate up a lot, as you can see right here, for using throughout the year in my Italian sauces and whatever else, crackers and whatever else I'm going to make that just would be nice to have that rosemary flavor. When I have it coming in fresh, which pretty much now it's all year round, but I like to use the fresh herbs like this for making vinegars. Rosemary in particular, I like to use for my hair. When the nasturtium flowers are coming in, I put the fresh nasturtium flowers in with the fresh rosemary to make vinegar. And as you can see right here, I started a batch from my own chickens of hard-boiled eggs that I am now fermenting, and I've got some fresh rosemary pieces in there, and some of these also have the flowers. You might be able to see it better in this picture right here that I took the first day I started, because this is going on to the 3rd day right now, which means it's getting close to being done. And then right here, I have some fresh lovage. Now, I like to eat fresh lovage, especially the youngest pieces, which these aren't super young. They're still kind of red when they first come in and start opening up. Those are so good to eat fresh, the whole stalk and the leaves. When they start getting to this point, they start getting a little bit tougher and the flavor gets stronger. However, this I'll be dehydrating up because this is going to be one of the more important herbs to go in my mixed greens that goes into everything through the whole year. So do you have to dehydrate them? No, it depends on how you're going to use them. Using them fresh as they're coming in is great. I will even use, even though it's not my favorite way, though I do dehydrate up a lot of feverfew and echinacea leaves and valerian leaves and catmint, to make my anti-inflammatory / pain relieving extract to use through the year. If I've got a headache and all these things are coming in fresh, I'll just pick them fresh and eat them. There's no sense in dehydrating it, making the extract, and then taking that. The extract is for the rest of the year when these things aren't growing in fresh. But there is one thing in particular that I am going to always use dehydrated herbs. Though teas and extracts or tinctures can go either way, you can use fresh or dried. When it comes to infusing oils, like I specifically saved these up for, the honeysuckle, the camellia flowers, the lavender flowers, and many other herbs. I save these up for infusing in oil and making my skin cream out of. I also add calendula. This jar is open and I'm currently working through it. Comfrey, which I have back here. So these are a couple more things that go in my skin cream, but also go in the salve. I don't use all the same herbs in the healing salve, but quite a bit of them are the same. So yeah, when it comes to infusing oils, it is very important that you use dried herbs in that case. That's going to prevent rancidity, and even though it's a very rare possibility, it will also prevent the possibility of having it being contaminated with botulism because of the moisture that can get trapped in the oil. So that is why it's important to use dried herbs in that. And mostly the biggest issue is to prevent rancidity. That's the thing that's most likely to happen. So there's benefits to dried and fresh. So use them however is best for you. Again, for me, vinegars and teas, I love making with fresh herbs. But I don't always have the fresh herbs all year round to be able to use in that way. And then the question that went right along with that, which I guess I already answered. So number 2 was, why dehydrate the herbs? Well, for putting up to get you through the whole year, just like the rosemary. Certain herbs I use for culinary uses that get used practically on a daily basis, and they're not always coming in fresh, like basil, for instance. So I want to be able to dehydrate up enough to get me through the whole year. Thyme though it doesn't die back during the winter, it doesn't grow anything new during the winter. So I want some fresh things to dehydrate and then have for use all year round. And then, as I mentioned before, during the winter time for making those things, even vinegars, I have these things on hand to get me through the year, or that greens blend that goes into everything I make through the year. Now, another option you can do is freeze them if you would like to. I prefer to dehydrate because they take up less space in storage that way, and they're easy to use, and I'm not filling my freezer up with things that don't really need to be frozen when they could easily be dehydrated. Question number 3 was, is there another way I can dehydrate besides using dehydrators? I understand this. Not everybody has the money to spend on electric dehydrators, or they don't have the space for such things. I totally get that. That's why I don't invest in certain types of appliances, because while I could make space for a lot of things, I don't like taking up a lot of space with those things, but dehydrators are important to me. So is there another way? Yes, there is. You can, especially if you live in a place that isn't really humid, you can hang your herbs to dry. This is the old-fashioned way of drying herbs. Most herbs will dry quite well by simply hanging them upside down somewhere and allowing them to dry. You can also, if you don't want to hang them everywhere, you can create some racks, kind of like what Patrick made for next to my wood stove. I'll put a picture here where I can dehydrate things next to the wood stove. It doesn't require any electricity. You can buy all kinds of different types of racks for drying, and that could be something you can put anywhere that's going to get plenty of warmth and air to help them to dry quickly, as long as it's not super humid that may prevent them from drying quickly. But in this case, though there's a lot of things you can dehydrate in your oven, like meats, vegetables, and fruits at the lowest temperature you can get, I personally don't recommend doing your herbs that way because you cannot get, at least on my oven, you certainly can't get the heat low enough to prevent damaging or burning those herbs. So with that said, that is one of the reasons, question number 4 is, this wasn't really a question that was asked, but it's one I like to explain. Why do I use dehydrators? One of the reasons why is because I can set it on a lower temperature and not worry about damaging the herbs. So typically, like some people will say 100 degrees, 105. I do 110 to 115 because of the way I pile the herbs on, and it depends on the herbs as well. A couple of the other main reasons I do this is I am putting up a lot of herbs and other dehydrated things, apples and zucchini and pumpkin and so much more through the year, that especially during the spring through summer and early fall, I have so much that I'm putting up that I don't have the time and the space to have things hung everywhere and have racks everywhere. And because here in the summertime, because of all of our moisture, remember, I call this rain country for a reason. 120 inches low average annual rainfall is a lot. And so when the sun comes out, it gets very, very humid here. And we get most of our sun during the time of the year that this stuff is growing. And even inside the house, it can be pretty humid. So it can take way too long for these things to dry if I was to do it that way, if I can get them to dry at all. Some things will dry okay, just in the open air, but most things do not and just take far too long, and I risk them possibly molding before they can dry. So it's important to me that they get fully dry because of all of those reasons right there. But that doesn't mean just because I do it this way that you have to do it that way. A lot of people have great success putting herbs in paper bags, even people who live in humid places, and hanging them somewhere or setting them somewhere to dry. My guess is that the paper bag, not only will it allow some airflow, but I think the paper probably absorbs some of the humidity so that the herbs will still dry better. However, that's not a great option for me, going back to the fact that I'm putting up a lot. I would have paper bags all over my house, all over my house. And I'm not willing to do that. A dehydrator is just a much more efficient way for me to do that, especially since I can run these. There's 2 of them. I bought 2 Kasoris of the smaller size, stack them so I can save more space that way. And I can run them on solar power when we're getting plenty, which right now we are. So that will save me electricity costs doing that. And then the last question is, because people watch me vacuum seal a lot of my herbs, like these are all vacuum sealed, this one's vacuum sealed, but the rest of these are not. Oh, the nettle back here is vacuum sealed. That's because these are currently in storage. I mean, I pulled them out so I could have something visual to show you. But like these are the ones I keep in my kitchen because I'm working through them. They're not vacuum sealed. The calendula flowers, the comfrey, these 2 jars right here are jars I'm currently working through. They're not vacuum sealed because I'm working through them. And honestly, when it comes to herbs, there's really no need to vacuum seal. You can simply just put your bands, your lids on nice and tight and just put them in storage. As long as they're completely dry and down to room temperature before you seal them up, whether you vacuum seal or just put an airtight lid on there, that's what's really important when it comes to herbs. They can last for years without even needing to be vacuum sealed. I prefer to vacuum seal all of them just to add that little extra insurance that they will hold their freshness for a longer period of time. But here's a comparison. One year I found a jar of oregano that was several years old that I'd put up that I had vacuum sealed, but it looked like the seal came loose sometime while it was in storage. I don't know how long it had been like that. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to compare this oregano to the oregano I just dehydrated and put up. And I couldn't smell or taste any difference between the two. So is it necessary to vacuum seal your dried herbs? No, it really is not. The things that are most necessary to vacuum seal when it comes to dry foods would be nuts, Brazil nuts, almonds, walnuts, peanuts, etc., and sunflower seeds, because the fats in there will go rancid with the oxygen exposure. But if you keep them vacuum sealed, they can last for many years in storage. Same thing goes with any dried meats you're putting up that still have the fat in them. Vacuum sealing will prevent the fat in there from going rancid, so it can last for many years. Certain other fruits and vegetables, it is best to vacuum seal, or they can get kind of stale over time. But when it comes to herbs, it's really a matter of choice, and I prefer to vacuum seal just as that added measure, especially since I'm doing that with pretty much everything anyway that I'm drying and putting up. So I hope me answering those questions will help. Especially if you're new to this, or you've been doing it, but you're just kind of looking at, why does Heidi do things the way she does? Well, there's why. So any thoughts, ideas, or more questions you may have, please put those in comments down below. And thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.